of one another's, of our speakers, of everyone, pretty much. And then please use this opportunity if you're on Zoom here with us to ask questions, chat in the chat feature. If you're YouTubing, we'll try to keep online of those comments as well, and all that. So it is my pleasure to introduce Cliff Kim, our Director of Insights and Analytics at Fender. And he's going to talk to us about some customer information, which is frankly my love, consumer behavior. So Clint, I will pass it over to you.
All right.
And you can go ahead and get started. I will disappear while you're talking.
Okie dokie. Let's see. Let's play this slideshow and share it. All right. Can you see that?
We can.
All right. Well, then let's jump right into it. So if you guys have any questions, just throw it into the chat. I think we'll get to it kind of at the end. That way it's a little more, I guess, flow of the session. But yeah, a little intro about myself. You know, my name's Cliff. I'm the Director of Insights and Analytics at Fender, musical instruments company. And, you know, I've kind of been using data to tell stories all my life, professionally now for about 10 plus years. My career has led me to some really iconic companies such as Yahoo, ESPN, Live Nation, Ticketmaster, and now Fender. I've built multiple analytics organizations, been a part of really large data teams, even been a department of one that I'm sure some of you might be. But the one thing that I've done was use insights and data to add millions of incremental revenue. But the real question is, how do you do something like that? And the way you do it is you instill data-driven culture into the workplace through powerful and actionable stories. And the most important aspect is helping the end user understand that every report you are building and every number that they see on your decks and your spreadsheets represents a person, an actual person, an actual customer. So the first thing I want to do is just start with Fender. Fender, iconic guitar brand that's been around for over 70 years. And while the iconic look has maintained its legacy over the years, the current crop of master builders are innovating every single day to modernize that perfect piece of history. So Fender has since launched this hybrid model called Acoustasonic, half acoustic, half electric, and everything in between. Innovation to service the need of every type of player. And, you know, the quote on there, Leo's vision was that artists are angels and it's our job to give them wings to fly. And that kind of will always be Fender's mission. But moving on to today, we wanted to continue that vision, but multiplying it, filling the world with angels by putting wings on beginner angels. Fill the world with angels. Amazing. And we decided to build an accessible guitar learning school for everyone that can teach them how to play at their pace, at their leisure, on their time. And now we're really proud to say over 2 million users have learned on Fender Play. And, you know, we're just getting started, because one of the things that we've done is we've opened up the platform to everyone on app, on web. We're not limiting it to credit card access. So for anyone on this call that's wanted to pick it back up and just try it for 7 days for free, no strings attached, learn for the first time, go check out Fender Play. Helps my numbers too. But so Fender Play, a little bit deeper, was designed to teach anyone how to learn, how to play their favorite songs. And our focus is quick, bite-sized lessons that are designed to get you playing in minutes. And the entire curriculum was built by real guitar instructors, some with PhDs in this stuff. And we dedicated ourselves to ensuring this program would be the absolute best way to become a guitar player quickly, and most importantly, with sustained skills that kind of last a lifetime. So we have an array of content that resonates with all different types of players. And the Fender team has been dedicated to fostering the development of the next generation of angels. So speaking of which, Fender Guitars and Mattel are marking the release of Netflix's new movie, Barbie Big City Big Dreams, with a new signature Barbie collection of song lessons on its online learning app. So this was created to inspire future musicians, and the lessons show young guitarists how to play songs from the movie while building guitar skills at the same time and playing techniques. So this fall, anyone who purchases Barbie dolls, it's in the stores now, inspired by these guitar playing characters, will also get 3 months of play for free. So again, we're dedicated to inspiring this generation and the next generation and the generation after that one. So pretty inspiring, exciting stuff. That's, in a nutshell, that's the vision. And vision is imperative, and marching towards that requires focus. But how do we ensure the initiatives follow suit? And I think everyone on this call probably knows it's through data, it's through insights. That's how you steer the ship towards vision, towards your goals. That's how you grow. You look at the map and you steer the ship. And while most professionals will say that is the case, but that doesn't always happen. Reports are often used to prove a case. Numbers are used just to check a box. And sometimes analysis just gets buried in an inbox and never sees the light of day. But why? Why does that happen? It just might be a sign that your team or your boss or your peers or possibly even your company is not data-driven. And it's your job. It's your job to help change and instill that culture as analysts. So what does it mean to be data-driven? It means that the data leads the strategy and initiatives, not measuring the validity of an instinct, because that's instinct-driven, which sometimes is validated by data, quite often spun to make the story work in your favor. It's, I like to think of it as when choosing a restaurant, you look up Yelp ratings, read reviews, check out the menu before you make a choice, versus walking into a restaurant with a nice sign that you think would satiate your cravings, and sometimes end up arguing with your friends that the restaurant you picked was actually good, even when you don't believe it, because there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to validating why you did something, especially when it fails or assumedly fails. So being data-driven is letting the data drive the decision, that top bar. You have questions, you build reports, you make a decision, have action. So you might be asking yourself, all this sounds reasonable. All this sounds really reasonable. Why wouldn't anyone agree to this? And I think it's because sometimes people see numbers just as numbers, because they have their own assumptions and they have their own baselines. And I had to realize this. It wasn't because teams didn't want to change for the customer, because that was what was frustrating me. It's because they didn't understand that those numbers represented customers. I mean, that's simple logic, but sometimes it's really hard to separate and distinguish and see behind all those numbers. But what's critical as an analyst is to bring to life is that you have that duty to represent the customer. Every single number you report is a customer giving you feedback that you take back to the stakeholder. They're telling you where they're looking, how much they like something, how much they hate something, and how often they're willing to use something. When you can help others realize the customer behind the data, that's when you start realizing how prudent becoming data-driven actually is. And I'm going to give you 4 tips on helping stakeholders see the customer behind the data. So first, sometimes percentages just aren't strong enough. So one of the major initiatives for any subscription business is to build a leakage map of your current acquisition funnel. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, where are the drop-off points? Where can we improve? So when we built ours, it showed that 63% made it from the sign-up screen to the plan screen. And when this information was brought up to the stakeholders, it was met with a lack of enthusiasm. However, months later, we receive a comment like this on the right. And it gets the teams to start brainstorming how to solve this issue, gets them excited, gets them problem solving. So my question is, why does the left have less impact, or why does the right have more impact? Because for me, as an analyst, I see the right as a blip. It's an outlier. A single comment versus an app that currently has a 4.8 star rating with 45,000 reviews. And then we perseverate on this. But how does one comment spark more discussion about change than the percentage on the left? I mean, I think it's because people have preconceived notions about what good percentages are. Just ask any 2 friends that disagree on a movie based on a Rotten Tomatoes score. One person will say, it got 63%. Let's go watch it. And another friend can say, it only got 63%. Both are saying the same thing, but their preconceived notions, the content behind why they're saying it is different. So with this analysis, there's no context. So people see this as an arbitrary benchmark, as opposed to the comment on the right as a displeased customer. So one of the things that I did is when I flipped this percentage to the actual whole number, which is actually 61,000 customers quit because they saw email sign up as a barrier. That caused a little bit of stir in a good way. So make sure that your percentages are telling the story, or use the whole numbers to back up your story. Sometimes that helps. Second tip is don't bury the actionable insight. So all these are a lot of stuff that I'm making mistakes on. So a little tidbit. So anticipating a little bit more backstory, anticipating the growing need for individual and healthy and positive hobbies during the pandemic and the time of isolation. At the end of March 2020, Fender offered 3 complimentary months of Fender Play, and we never did that before. No catch. We kind of just wanted to do our part. And since that point, we've taught 1.4 million new learners and that have come into Fender Play to learn guitar, and an incredible amount of users hungry to learn, hungry to consume during a time when all of us were home. You know, if you're stuck at home, might as well make a little bit of noise. So the good part of that is that led to soaring guitar sales, because if you flood the market with new learners, you flood the market with new guitar buyers. So increasing guitar sales to record counts was amazing. But we did uncover something very interesting based on purchasing behavior as we started diving deeper into this audience. The gray pie part is they intended to buy, or they didn't intend to buy. They did exactly as we expected. But it gets interesting when you hit the green, because 20% of our users planned to buy, but didn't end up buying, which is a bit concerning. So we dove deeper into those users, broke it down a little further to figure out if it's something we did or something else that happened. And the top 2 reasons for not making that purchase seem to correlate with the unprecedented times we're living in, with the number 1 reason likely derived from losing their job. The third reason was the most interesting, as these users didn't feel they deserved a new guitar until they've made some sort of progress. And this was another one of those items that was buried because it was a percentage behind a percentage. And it was also ignored because it was third on a list. But it is actually the number 1 item that we can make a difference in today. For anyone that's ever learned a skill, particularly an instrument, they know that there's someone better. Does anyone ever feel like they're good enough at an instrument? Does anyone feel good? No, because you look at John Mayer and you're like, wow, that's good. You know, what we can do to make a difference is setting benchmarks, you know, encouraging their progress could further enhance these users' self-conscious perceptions of getting a new guitar, because they deserve it. If you have the funds, if you want to learn, it's actually easier to learn on a new electric guitar than it is on an old acoustic guitar that's action is crazy. When you realize there's 31,000 people that said this, and it's also the number 1 item to influence, it kind of tells a different story. So make sure you give proper context to the percentages, again, whether it's through volume or even just in the presentation of data, and what we can affect and what we can use to impact our customers. Third, don't leave things to assumptions. So we may have added, you know, a ton of users. We have a ton of new learners, but one of the most fascinating and frustrating things was that 33% of users that signed up didn't touch the product for 7 weeks. Didn't touch it at all. That's over 300,000 users that didn't do that. And there were many conspiracy theories going around. Why? What is going on? Why are they like this? Like, they might be duplicate users, people that are just spamming signups just to get it done. Maybe. Could it be COVID impact? You know, is this just a function of COVID? They sign up and, you know, things happen. Maybe. Do people hate our product? Probably not, but maybe. Is there something wrong with our platform? Can they not log in? You know, ideating is healthy, but reaching conclusions without digging can be dangerous. It can lead you just to the wrong path. You can stray in ways and develop things that won't impact the customer. So this huge cohort of users needs to be dug into. So we sent them a survey to break down who they were, why they signed up, and all these things. And here's kind of some of the things that we found. We asked them what their proficiency was, and the results of that became fascinating. This group evenly split beginners, former players, active players, beginners, intermediate, advanced. They weren't just one type of player. And the reason why this is fascinating is prototypically users that come in are over 70% beginner. 70%. We built the product to help beginners learn and get over that initial hump. So again, I think that alone tells a lot of the story, but I think it's important to split out their answers of why, their motivation and their excuses based on their proficiency, because we're going to be able to find different things that are telling a story. So their motivations for starting ended up being, as you might imagine, vastly different. So the beginners had aspirations for learning, right? This was their chance to do it. And while intermediate players, they just wanted a refresher to kind of pick up where they left off. And advanced learners just wanted to see what play was about, potentially to see if this platform could enhance their skills. But the common denominator between all of them was that none of these users actually watched one lesson in that first 7-week span. None of them actually started playing. But why? Why sign up without using it? Still infuriates me. The absolute beginners, they cited not having an instrument as the second main reason they didn't start, which is a great opportunity to reach out, get them to purchase gear up front. So it enhances our marketing strategy. The number one excuse across all users was time. They didn't have enough time. That's probably not enough information that we need to dig further into, but I think something else that did come up with many of these users was health conditions as reason they didn't use the product. And I think thinking into that, while the pandemic might have boomed the signups, it was also a unique roadblock to users getting started. And I think that's where, sometimes it's easy for us to look at the positive of that, but not look at the effect on the other side. There's a customer behind each item, behind each of these percentages, and the behavior tells us so much about a consumer and also the current time period. So when you address and you squash assumptions, you can really begin to start attacking the key takeaways to kind of enhance the next strategic development and advancement in both, marketing initiatives, product initiatives, commerce, all of that, to be able to better service the consumer. All right, and fourth, it's easy to focus on the wins, but both sides have customers. So, we're focusing on developing new players every day. And, our instructors have been focusing on a pedagogy that relies on habit building, little habits. Studies have shown that it takes 66 days for a habit to become automatic. And we're trying to build up those tiny habits that create lasting change. And while it's worked to a certain degree, we still know that guitar has an incredibly high barrier. Over 90% of new guitar players will give up playing the instrument. They'll stop progressing. Even though they were fueled with desire to start, they leave, they abandon. And it's because guitar is like going to the gym. On January 1st, you think about the gym, January 1st, everyone is dedicated to going to the gym. I'm going to make this happen. And then a week goes by and you're like, I'll go next week. A month goes by, I'll go next month. And 7 months go by and you think, how did I get swindled into this membership? And I think that's because the idea of going to the gym and also the idea of learning guitar is much more romantic than the actual practice of it. Because the actual practice takes sweat equity. It's hard. It's tough. It's a journey. It's long. It's not easy. It's not like watching a YouTube video and then you consume it. It's not like Neo getting plugged into the Matrix and now I know everything. It takes the time to build it up, and it's hard work that sometimes you question whether it's worth it. And so sometimes it's something that users don't have and will need us as the company to help encourage them and give them that outside motivation to keep going. And why pour so much sweat and to get all of these users going? It's because the benefit for us at Fender is for a user that does make guitar more than just a hobby, you know, using it and turning it into a habit and then turning that into a lifetime skill becomes infinitely more valuable. They go from owning a single guitar, which most of the time is your dad's relic found in a storage unit somewhere during a Marie Kondo moment, to a potential LTV of $10,000 per customer. Upgrading from your dad's guitar to a Mocha Burst Fender American Ultra Stratocaster with noiseless pickups and humbucker. Just got the goosebumps. They find the value in relation to their skill. So guiding them through that path of success on the learning side yields tremendous results for us on the hardware side. But, so what can we do to influence them? And we found that the importance of adoption in that first week really leads to a stronger potential for lifetime conversion. As you can see in the blue, each lesson that you take, the further you go, the higher propensity you have to becoming a lifetime player. So it's easy to be proud of the impact of the tool, to say we've created something that the more you use it, the better it is. Wonderful. And you see the happy faces of the customer. We have a Facebook community where I say it's the most positive place on the internet. You won't find a comment section on Facebook like that doesn't devolve into something else. I think one of the things that we've been trained to do is lean into the commonalities of successful customers that yield higher results, and we build lookalike models for that success. Very sound strategy, and I'm not saying don't do that. But on the other side, it's easy to say that they weren't high value customers in the first place, the users that abandoned. But we're not here to fill the world with one type of angel. We're here to fill the world with all different kinds of angels. And for every player that cranks through the finger pain, goes through the frustration, sometimes supplementing with in-person instructors, having the resources to do that. On the other side, there's another that just needs a little bit more help before they frustratingly give up on playing again and again and again, because it's their dream. And we want to really figure out how we can help them figure out that dream. So just remember what users look like on both sides of the bar chart. So I think while we are leaning into the things that make a user successful, we also need to counterbalance that by taking the time to analyze what could help these failed users cross over into success. And we're taking these and using them to inform the next wave of sprints, epics, market initiatives, paid campaigns, CRM flows. That's the thing that gets me going, helping these users get a little bit further. So kind of to sum up this whole thing, I think it's easy for us as analysts and research professionals to sometimes be consumed by the numbers. We're constantly parsing, constantly building queries that lead us down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And we're discovering those minor nuances every day. And during these sessions, we often lose sight of why we're digging in the first place. So the key is to remember, behind every session number, behind every conversion, is a consumer that's telling us something. It's incredibly easy to look at numbers just as numbers, but storytelling is all about the characters and the subjects and the journey they take across a movie. And how utterly impactful would it be if all the characters and subjects were inanimate objects? The story of the rock and the bench that just stood there. But that's same with these numbers. When they're only seen as numbers, it's incredibly hollow and empty. But when you humanize them, all these numbers, by reminding all your stakeholders that this represents customers telling you something, that's when every number becomes powerful, from the small to the big. And it becomes a part of a story and a journey. And when you can master that, that's when you let the consumer's voice be heard. And it can turn into things like this.
Okay. And we have a straw malfunction. Okay.
I think today has been a very good day. Looking forward to tomorrow.
Down, up, down, up, down.
That's sounding better. That's sounding better. Okay, nice.
That's it. So I think that's all I got.
All right, thank you so much, Cliff. I enjoyed that. If there's any questions, you can either post them in the chat or in the Q&A. Just let us know. We'll take a little bit of time here to see if anybody has some questions, if that's okay, Cliff.
Yeah. I'd love to answer anything for you guys. But I'm also learning as much as you guys are.
Do you actually play guitar, Cliff?
I do. It was a kind of a coming home moment when I started 20 years ago in my church band.
Nice.
And trying to buy a Fender at that time was, it's so difficult as a high school kid. It's just as expensive as it is now. And so it's I understand the want and desire and how feeling good enough kind of comes into play, because I think
that can be applied to so many different products, because I'm not musically inclined at all, so I do not play guitar or any instrument for the sake of everyone involved. But for products I do use, I find myself, even saying that, like, I'm not good enough. Golf, for instance, I'm not good enough for that set of clubs. I'll just stick with the cheap clubs until I get good enough.
We were challenged by some members of our board to find the point in which it becomes fun, and I think that probably applies to a lot of skill-based, hobbies like golf is
Mhm.
when is the point where you want to do it, where you're not just slogging through the hitting the
Yeah.
ball so poorly, not getting your putts in, but when it becomes like, oh, there's something here, that's where they
Yes,
challenge us
absolutely.
to find, and
Yeah,
that's
and to get
something
people
that's
to
important.
that point and keep them engaged. All right, so we do have a couple questions.
Sure.
First, this is from an anonymous attendee, otherwise I would say their name. But how were the suggestions to improve the app experience generated? It was shown on one of your last slides. Did respondents select from a list? Was it open-ended? And how did you help your colleagues understand that process and where to focus?
So we collaborated. So let me answer the last one first. So
Okay.
one of the things that I like to do is get buy-in from our teams beforehand, because I feel as though once I show the metrics on the back, like after it's all done, the analysis, I find that they are much more hesitant to agree. I feel like they're inclined to disagree at first. This might be too much detail, but I once lived in a condo where I was trying to pass a sound test barrier, and I hired my own sound test engineers, but it never passed. And the president actually gave me a recommendation. He says, "Why don't you invite a sound engineer twice? Once when the first panel gets down and he tells you this will pass, and then secondarily after all of the panels have been placed, then sound test it again. Then he has much more skin in the game to be able to say, oh yes, this actually will pass because he was a part of the process from the beginning." Similarly, with these surveys and developments, we kind of bring up all the things we want to talk about at the beginning. We both do a list and also have open-ended fields when we feel it's very important to. Otherwise, we really like to kind of keep it simple to the main themes that we're seeing and then how we can break those out. But for that specific question, we had an open field because we thought it was really important to see what the users are saying. And we're going to dive deeper into it also with qualitative studies as well.
Excellent. And then Calvin asks, have you tried to gauge the brand equity value of signing up, even when people remain inactive?
Yeah, we do a lifetime value of, or what is the value of an email subscriber, someone that comes into the ecosystem. So we do analysis of users, whether they use it or not, whichever location they sign up from, because we have multiple entryways. And we try to figure out the value of that because we're spending paid dollars to acquire some of these users. So is it worth that bridge? And as long as the numbers work out, it's still worth it.
Excellent. And then Nick asks, how much, I have to close to my screen because, I'm old now.
That's okay.
How much or how often do you include the market research department for this type of research?
Always. Always. I always try to get everyone as involved that needs to be as often as we can. I think collaboration is so critical for something that's people are so passionate about. People are really passionate about Fender Play, and people are really passionate about its success. Both the customers and the employees. Like what good of a feeling it is to build more musicians and bring more music into the world. And because of that, people are really, they feel really close to it. And so I think people are willing to put in that extra effort. So I think luckily for me, it's easy to get involvement at the beginning. And so I try to involve as many groups as I can.
That makes sense, especially now when everything is so interdepartmental.
Yeah.
I understand. And then Jennifer asks, how much of your data was from internal sources versus external? So panel, secondary data, et cetera. And do you find believability of the data changes by source.
Yes, absolutely. When people are more inclined to believe the analytics data from our own sources, and they're less inclined to believe research, just because I think sometimes, so with analytics data, it's everybody, right? You're analyzing everyone and there it is. But with research data, it's a sample size that is it's to I'm lapsing on the word, but it represents, there we go, it represents everybody, right? And because not everyone is going to respond. So as you can probably tell from that one example that I gave of someone speaking up, that one, it's like, are we missing that guy that is going to say that thing? You know, are we capturing everybody? And so it's a lot of education that has to continue to happen, because especially something like qual, right, which they're going to gravitate towards with a lot of actual user feedback, but the sample size is smaller. But with qual, it doesn't require as big of a sample size as something like a quant survey, and it doesn't require as an analytics. And so I think it's just in terms of education, that's kind of the largest part of making sure people respect and take the data for what the data says.
Yes. Yeah, I have found in my career too that education portion is a much larger percentage of the job than I had expected.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to do this presentation, because I think in a lot of ways, at least when I started, I thought everyone, especially that was above me, believed everything the data said. You know, I was like, it's the data. It's not personal. It has nothing to do with that. This is just what it says. But I find the further along I go in my career, people like everyone here on this call are the rarity, where we are not. We take the data for what it says and then try to move off of that. Whereas a lot of people will find a reason not to believe it, you know? And so that's why I always like to frame it as there's a customer here. They're telling us this. It's not just these numbers that I'm creating out of a database, out of thin air, that I'm trying to push my agenda. I have no agenda. I just want what's best for the customer. That's my only agenda. And so that's why I like to like this presentation, and this idea is so important to me, is because I've used that method to really help other people see how powerful and how useful data is.
Excellent. That is all the questions. Cliff, I thank you so much. That was, I enjoyed it immensely.
Okay, good. At least I got your approval.
Not data driven. So yes, I appreciate that. And I think even, you know, us here at Accelerant working for a, you know, on the supplier side,
yeah,
definitely applicable as well. So thank you so much again.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening in. I really appreciate everyone coming in, and I hope all of us can continue as data nerds to bring the truth to the world.
It is always good to get together with fellow data nerds. Okay. Thank you again, Cliff. All right, guys, we're going to